I'm Celia Ellenberg. I'm the beauty director of Vogue. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for coming. We all took a tour of your beautiful school this morning and are collectively blown away. There are such amazing opportunities here, and we are so psyched to have the opportunity to talk to you guys. So I'm just going to get right started. So these days, all of us are just as likely to pick up a product for amazing packaging design as the label on the back with all of the ingredients. How have you guys, as brand founders and creators, seen consumer savviness change over the last few years? And how does ingredient knowledge and research really impact the way you're going about formulating, marketing, and branding your products?
I started a brand called Flesh, so it's just been out in the market for 8 months. And I think that the consumer consciousness of ingredients and of the quality of ingredients and the list of ingredients that are forbidden has made the industry better. It's just made us better at everything that we do. And I feel like it's a great thing to have that feedback. And I credit a lot of it to social media, where we are, if someone doesn't deliver, we're called on it. So it really has kind of elevated the business and made us better at what we do, and just made us more honest and produce things in a sort of more thoughtful way. And I think that deals with ingredients as well as packaging, and I think that it's very important for us not to have excess packaging. And it used to be that if you made a luxury brand, you would have to have a cellophane and a box and then a little platform and then another thing and a spatula and it was just like, I don't know, I'd open my products. I used to be the editor-in-chief of Allure, a magazine I founded, and I would open products and my garbage can in my bathroom would be full with one product. So it's thinking about all those things and just being more aware, and I think I credit really the consumer for changing that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, when we started Milk Makeup, it was sustainability socially, but also with ingredients, and being as clean as possible was not just a necessity. It had to be a given for us, because that was what we held our product. We were trying to channel the savviness of, at the time, a downtown New York woman who most definitely knows what is in her products and cares deeply about what she uses, but also wants to have fun and be spontaneous. So those are the standards that everything is held to these days, and it's such a relief. I mean, Rosemary and you really started this clean beauty movement, and I'm so happy that almost all new brands are really adhering to these new standards.
Well, as you guys know, I'm a makeup artist. I've been doing makeup for like 10 million years. And with all those models, smack. Anyway, and just having worked so long in the industry, I could really see that there was, I could see what was working, what wasn't working. And one of my big things is to have the purity of ingredients on the model's skin, mostly when I was doing Victoria's Secret a lot, because you're seeing the skin. They're wearing bra and panties. And I used to really be upset when I'd look at the monitor and you'd see, much heavier. There's a residue on the makeup that caught the light. So I wanted really clean products that looked like the oil that I just put on their skin, and I wanted it to equate with exactly what the, sorry guys.
I'll get it for you.
And I wanted it to basically look like the skin on the body. So I just started doing healthier products and, sustainable ingredients, healthy ingredients, recycling boxes or recycled paper for boxes, and glass. My big thing was glass. And, I'm sure some of you guys have glass also, right?
Yeah.
And Rosemary, when you started, it was almost fringe at the time, right? So this is almost 10 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer. I'd venture to say that we're getting towards mainstream acceptance and almost demand from consumers for these things. So how have you seen that shifting from your position? And does it feel good to be veering towards the mainstream?
Well, it's funny because when I started my brand and I went around to the editors and there was a wall. Nobody wanted to talk to me. Everybody they would see me only because of who I was in the industry as a makeup artist. But when it came to actually trying to, project educate people on what I felt was going on in the industry and what some of us already know too. It became a problem, but now it's really changed. The consumer has gotten, they're much more wise. They're not fooled and put a little visor over their eyes anymore. They're smart. They look at ingredients, they figure how they're sourced, and they ask brands questions. So you have to know what your brand is about. You have to know the ingredients, where it's sourced or how it's sourced. They even go into the labs on how the electricity is done in the labs. You know what I mean? If they're wind powered, and so here I am.
And Nick, I think your brand is the newest of the group. So when you were coming to market, kind of having almost the luxury of knowing all of this now, right, coming out in 2018, correct?
Yeah.
How did that impact the way that you brought Nécessaire to life?
I mean, I think transparency had to be a key value that we knew we had to go. We went in eyes wide open, knowing that we were going to have a comment section where people could ask whatever they wanted to ask, and we weren't going to silence any comments. And so you kind of have to look at ingredients, which is not my purview, but content is, ingredients as content. And so, have to understand sort of where is this source from, what does it do, what is the score on the Environmental Working Group website, like what are consumers going to research when they're looking at your product and they're looking at an ingredient, and then what kind of information do you as a brand want to serve them and help in that sort of discovery process. So we had kind of mapped out, a couple of different content franchises that would help sort of demystify the ingredients that are in beauty products, which, are not 3 ingredients, in a product. There are dozens of ingredients in a product. Some of them sound scary, some of them are scary, but some of them sound scary and are not scary. So I think kind of looking at it as a learning opportunity for the people who are buying into the brand was something that we had kind of preemptively planned for. And then, of course, the brand launches and grows, and you answer questions in the comments, and you get ideas for new ways, to talk about ingredients from the comments.
And Michael, who probably has the most frequent flyer miles of anybody on this stage, is seeing this sort of unfold on an international scale. So can you talk a little bit about how are you seeing this impact worldwide?
No, definitely. I feel like this was something that obviously was started here in the U.S., in the U.K., like more in the Western markets. But now you're seeing this even in, if you go to Asia. I mean, everyone's looking for clean beauty. And coming from, a big company with big brands, I feel like obviously there's a lot more work that we need to do. And even if I look at the brands I work for, we're always quick to say, oh, this is green, this is natural. And we do it. But, how green, what is that definition of green? What is that definition of natural? I think brands have their own view of what that means. So they put in one ingredient and now we're natural. And I have to say, we're guilty as a big company of doing that. But to your point, the consumer is so savvy, so they are calling us out on that. And I think as brands, it's our responsibility, or brand leaders, to really step and challenge the organization. So challenge my leadership and the teams that are developing these products, because the consumer demands that, and also it's the right thing to do. It's good for you, right? So.
And it's the consumer, but it's also a new generation of both product lovers and purchasers and designers who are causing a lot of this change. And a big momentum that is happening in the industry right now is an increased focus on sustainability, which I imagine you have seen and are a big part of. And I want us to be able to talk about this a little bit more here. You're going to start seeing a lot more imperatives and initiatives from the industry in the next 5 years, and it's going to start changing rapidly, which is amazing. And I think there's a big role that big brands can play in this, and there's a big role that smaller brands can play in this. And I think the big brands will make it possible for it to become more affordable for everybody to play in the space. And then the small brands have to ask themselves questions. And if you're going to launch a product brand, you have to ask yourself, these are premiums that you pay to have recyclable packaging, to get fair trade, minimal environmental impact ingredients. So, does anybody want to start on how you think about this when you're formulating, when you're packaging? Are you seeking out different kinds of vendors now than you were before? How are you planning to implement this into your own work?
I think what you're saying, it is really expensive. The packaging is big investment, and we did our line really quickly. We started conceptualizing it in July of 2017, and we got Ulta to sign on in November, and we were in the store in July, so it was a little under a year. And that was kind of unheard of, and sometimes when you do something really quickly, that it takes time to find great packaging and sustainable packaging. So right now, I'm looking at, innovations for end of 2019, 2020, and I'm obsessed with making sure that we do not have any plastic. And I get a little pushback because plastic is less expensive, and so cost of goods is less expensive, and you forget that these are the things you have to think about. But it's like, I am not going to bring out a new product that's plastic. It feels like every day we hate plastic a little bit more than we hated it the day before. So we've got to think about this responsibly in the waste that we produce. And I think certain companies are working on this and bringing things in at lower prices. And I have so much respect for something like Seed that came out of L'Oreal, where it's a line of hair care products done with cardboard packaging, paper packaging that doesn't dissolve and fall apart in the shower, and it's like genius.
And it can also be planted, I believe, in the soil.
I know, it's like that's an extraordinary achievement, and they did it in a little incubator that was part of L'Oreal, a brand that hasn't been in that world as much. So I think there's just a lot of hope out there, and I've got a lot of hope for the future, but I think that we have to just weigh the fact that it might cost more for us to produce these things, and we better suck it up.
And is there benefit, Rosemary, you were saying that you've had glass all along, so, you grew slowly, right? So that was presumably a deliberate choice because you had made that packaging decision. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, actually, I'm going to be really honest. We're running into some problems with packaging because the more I find out about packaging and recycling and all that, and what is recyclable, what isn't recyclable, I'm finding out a lot of things that are, like, okay, for example, we have our glass jars. They're acid etched. So those are recyclable. And I just found out that when you frost them with the spray frost that the companies use, that's not recyclable. So brands are kind of jumping on that bandwagon of saying, oh yeah, we have recyclable glass, but it's actually not recyclable if it's been sprayed. Did you guys know that?
Well, and the reason, I did not know that, but the reason, and just so you know, the reason why it's sprayed and frosted is not for the appearance, it's so that it protects the ingredients inside from sun exposure and degradation from the sun. So I didn't know that. Coming from the beauty magazine world into this, it's like, oh, that's another indication.
But it's interesting because I remember when I started, everybody said, just spray it, just spray it. And I said, can you please send me the formula of every ingredient that's in the spray? Wow. Yeah, ooh. That's not happening, so I use acid etching. But then again, I've acid etched my glass, and what do they use? They use tons of water to clean it all up after. So one way or the other, it's really hard to be sustainable. It really, really is. Like, we try the best we can, and there are plastics that are really, really bad for you, of course, and for the ocean and whatever's happening. But there are plastics that are recyclable also. It's a better quality plastic. And, we actually can't get our little metal lids made anymore that we had. They're little tin lids. So we've gone to a plastic that's actually recyclable. So, we are having troubles, too, with the whole sustainability.
But I think what you're speaking to also highlights, like, how on it you have to be. Yeah. Like,
yes.
that you've been, you as the founder of the company have been at the front line saying, what's in that thing? No, wait, like, that has a new coating on it. What's in that coating? Oh, wait, that coating can't be recycled. Like,
yeah.
That's a level of attention to detail that you probably never imagined, you'd have to have. And also, but that's required to actually walk the walk.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the firing line all the time. I don't know if you guys watch me on Instagram, but anyway, sorry, I'm the funny one here, obviously. Anyway.
But there are some real hazards, right? Like, especially if you have a bath and body care line, right? You can't really do that in glass because what will inevitably happen is those will shatter in your bathroom. So how do you communicate those choices effectively?
So my co-founder, Randy Christensen, is incredibly passionate about sustainability, and it's sort of her mission to sort of lead the brand to a really fabulous place in sustainability. You're right that in the bathtub, you can't have big glass bottles because if they shatter, it's a huge safety hazard. I think again, I'll say that transparency in where we are, which is that we're in recyclable plastic. We have post-consumer waste boxes, and our shipping system, which is the actual box that will flash up on the screen with a muslin bag inside. That box is 100% post-consumer waste and made with recyclable ink, which Randy designed. And sort of being able to do it where you can, and then to sort of say, okay, now we're going to try to find in our next phase plastics that are less, still recyclable, but maybe less hazardous to the environment in other ways. Is sort of you have to take it in phases.
Right. TerraCycle is doing great things, and that's something that Milk Makeup is. We're in conversations with them about our plastics. We already use a lot of recycled plastics in our packaging, but we can always get better. And there's some great examples of chic TerraCycle-made packaging that is hitting the market and is not taking away from the brand at all. A great example is Ren Skincare. Really looking good and is all made of all recycled materials. And and Loop is coming out soon, which is P&G and Unilever are creating that for their, which is going to be create. Do you want to speak to Loop a little bit? Or? No. Oh.
I don't know enough about it. No, I don't mean to sound mean about it, but yeah.
In reference to sort of like big corporations and how they play in this and the part, especially when it comes to the supply chain and creating that demand. And at Lauder, I feel like, we started to make moves in that direction, in the right direction. Could it be quicker and faster? Yes. But we actually just recently made a commitment that by 2025, our packaging would be 75% to 100% recyclable, or, the products we're using or certain ingredients being taken out. So we're making those steps. I think it's sort of like all these brands and corporations banding together, whether it's the Lauders and the L'Oreals and the P&Gs of the world, to help create that demand and really force, whether it's suppliers, vendors, because obviously it is a cost challenge. Even for big brands, it's a cost challenge. I work on La Mer, and we're trying to find ways to, as a luxury brand, how do we maintain that luxury prestige look, but also minimize the size of our packaging? So it's always this compromise, and it's a cost factor. I mean, when you're a public company and you have shareholders that you're beholden to, they're always looking at the bottom line, regardless of, the progress and efforts you're trying to make to be more sustainable and more transparent.
And I think there is sort of an overarching lesson that you can always improve and you can always get better, even if you have products that are very established or brands that are very established. I think people are really listening to the consumer in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. And everybody seems kind of on board to keep getting better and better with formulas, with ingredients, and with packaging. And again, a lot of that is coming from a new feedback loop that just really has become possible with social media. If you think about it, even 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, you couldn't speak directly to a brand founder. You couldn't speak directly to a formulator. You couldn't provide that real-time feedback. And creating this sense of community has become such an important part of brand success in the modern beauty industry. And it's challenging to do that well, and it's challenging to do that consistently. But I am wondering, how do you guys sort of handle that feedback? I know, Nick, you were saying that you guys opened up your comment section to whatever happened to come in. I imagine that's both a blessing and a curse every once in a while. But how is it really beneficial for you to have this channel directly to?
I mean, it's invaluable. Yeah. To be able to, whether or not you end up being a brand sold at a Sephora or an Ulta, or you're a brand that is sold direct to consumer, like we are right now, having that initial relationship with the consumer and being able to sort of have a consumer feel like they're part of your journey as a brand creates such a brand allegiance that is, that's hard to break. I think that both the comment section and email addresses, or whatever sort of way that you're getting feedback, you have to take it all seriously. And one comment represents many more thoughts. So if one person's saying it, and they're often saying the most negative thing because it's the internet. you have to imagine that many more people are thinking it, and that and we take all of that seriously. Of course, you're not going to be able to please everyone at every turn. But actually, one of the funny things I was just thinking about in terms of feedback is customer service. With a direct-to-consumer company is so valuable because you're speaking directly to someone who works at the company who can literally pass a note to someone in the packaging department or someone in the product development department who can help actually change policies, change plans. So being an open, having feedback in several different ways is super valuable.
I totally agree, and our commitment to sustainable palm oil has been the result of a lot of feedback from our customers wanting that. So that's just an example of how it really did affect what the agreements that we make with our fillers in terms of sustainable. Sustainable palm oil is a huge one that we've been talking about behind the scenes. And then I'll also say there's just a human. I think each one of us up here with our companies are doing our best, and it's really important with customer feedback to be transparent that there's an iterative process to it. Nothing is this all or nothing, you're in or you're out. We're all trying to improve and getting better every day, and as long as you're honest about that, we can all, that really builds trust as well.
Yeah, I think that some of us on the panel started our careers as content creators, and Nick and Georgie and I. And I think that the great thing about social media is that we can tell our brand story, and we can tell it over and over and over again, and then we get feedback about it. We can get pushback even, and I think that's part of transparency as well. Is like, as Nick said, you're allowed to say what you want and comment, and it's important for us as a brand to listen and to not negate it. When I was at Allure, magazines would always talk about it's a conversation, and it's like, well, not really. It's one-way conversation, and and maybe the 4 people in the world will write a letter to the editor, but other than that, there was not really much of a conversation. Now it's a conversation, and when we launched, we named our brand Flesh, and we have all these outrageous product names like Moist Flesh is one of our products, just to really offend everybody. And we kind of did it for the fun of it, but also because I thought, hey, this is kind of delicious and wonderful and provocative and cool. And people responded and posted. There was a Reddit thread about how horrible the names were. They were disgusting. It was for zombies. And
all press is good press.
And I was like down Instagram. I'm like, because they were alive. It was like, okay, we're having a conversation. And we actually did a kind of fake newspaper celebrating all the negative comments that we got. And it was just like, I love that. But the other part of this feedback loop that we have is that you're constantly speaking to people and getting their feedback, and then we meet in real life with our most ardent followers. It's like we invite them to come and we'll do sessions, and we'll have like 12 people in a room, and we'll say, what do you like, what do you not like, what's working, what isn't working, what do you think you need, how do you feel about other products, what do you feel about the social media, and it makes us all better, and it connects us in such a way that you create this kind of community of like-minded people, or not so like-minded, but that you get really honest conversations going. And I think of, as you as students, one of the things that, maybe how to penetrate this world and think about how do you get a job once you graduate, even though your job rate is like 99%, so I'm not worried about you. But, but it's like, you can start to communicate with brands on social media right now. And the best way to do it is follow the brands that you love. And not just like what they post, but comment. And comment in a really clever way, so that you're engaging. And we read every comment, and we read every DM. I have a team of 4, so it's a giant team of 4 to do everything. Not just social media, but so we have one person on social media, but we all read everything, we all comment. So it's a really useful way for you all to connect with a brand right now, and to learn and to give feedback, and then you will be remembered. We will remember exactly who did this, and we want to connect with you. So it's a really great, different world than just a brand shouting out its values to the world in an advertisement that you might see and might not see. But it's not about humans talking to humans, which is what social media is.
And I think it is also, correct me if I'm wrong, you're seeing a lot more user generation for a lot of brands, which has been very successful and something to keep in mind, when you're starting out. But what that has also done, because there are more people involved in creating this content beast, it has just changed the game for representation in the industry as well.
Yeah.
You see faces now in this industry in campaigns, part of brand founding teams that, just were not being represented in numbers, again, even just 10 years ago. And I think social media has really helped really open up that conversation. Is that something that you guys really take into consideration when you're designing your products? These days, obviously, people will talk about the Fenty effect. Rihanna's brand, they launched 40 foundation shades. This was a huge deal in the world, not just on social media. And what's interesting is that a lot of brands had those 40 shades. And we're quick to say afterwards, well, we have 40 shades of foundation, what's the big deal? But they were not. If you just show those 40 shades in an advertising campaign with 2 different faces, then you're not really relaying that appropriately. So it's a real mix of marketing and of formulating in a broader capacity. As you guys are designing new shades, as you guys are designing new campaigns, as you're looking to new places to cast, to hire, how is that impacting what you're doing with your companies?
I mean, we are always, we launched with 40 foundations really because once Fenty came out, it was like, you can't do less than that. It's not, it's not even possible. But it was really important for us to make sure that the shades actually looked good. It wasn't just a numbers game. We made sure that we had to actually reformulate the darker shades because the formulas wouldn't hold the color and they turned ashy on the skin, so we had to do new formulas. So, but we also thought about nude lipsticks. Well, nude used to be a color, there's still brands that have a lipstick called nude and it's beige. And it's no, that's not nude. That's one person's nude. So we had to do nude lipsticks for every shade of skin and every shade of lips and highlighters for every shade. And it was really important that that inclusivity message wasn't just a kind of check the box thing, but something that was very deeply embedded in who we are. And then the next step is how to do it, as Celia says, in terms of photography. And what we need to do is we want to photograph people and have it be real people and people of different ages and different sexes and different, just all different types. It's not just a skin color story. So that's our next step, is to engage people. And if anybody wants to be in the shoot, just DM me.
And Georgie, I remember, something that was so disruptive about the Milk makeup look when you guys launched was that I think you did that incredibly well, and it felt very organic and authentic. How did you achieve that, per se?
So I feel like the most impactful moments for brands are when it comes from an authentic place, obviously, and lucky for us, Milk has this vibrant creative culture that was just what I was trying to represent when we came out as a brand with the branding. So it's really, in my mind, a cross-section of who would be at a gallery opening at Milk, or in the elevator of Milk, where you would see a nobody and a somebody and a model and an artist and an emerging person and an established person and everyone in between. And you'd also see naturally in New York, people are as vibrant as they are here in terms of articulating exactly who they are. So we really got to see the spectrum of individuality grow before it was mainstream. And so really just representing a trans person in a look that they would actually wear rather than adhering to European beauty standards, so i.e. making them look like a supermodel. So really it was just, a lot of, I'm glad to say this is the norm now, is people just letting the model come to set and maybe wear their own clothes and really be a part of the look that they're wearing. And if they're not comfortable in it, let's tweak it until you are, and then that's going to be the look. And so we did get a lot of great feedback in the beginning of just being one of the first brands in Sephora to have boys in our campaign and trans models in our campaign being themselves, just being themselves. And in the past, we were not the first people to use trans models, but in the past they had adhered to these kind of antiquated beauty norms of the one supermodel in the European look, looking, and that style of beauty. So it was really democratizing that and speaking to people that hadn't been spoken to before and every single campaign we do is trying to broaden that spectrum of individuality. So we're looking forward to, featuring more disabled models, obviously every body type, always working to get every ethnicity in there possible. So yeah.
And I do really feel like this is something that America has really taken the lead on. And we talk about this at the office a lot, that a lot of things that have changed for us in our coverage and the way that a lot of the new American startup brands that are launching in the beauty space every day, this is just a given, like Georgie said, this is the new norm. And it's, we are sort of leading that, but beauty is a global business. And you want to be able to track with audiences here, and ultimately, if you grow to be sold internationally, to make sure that those messages are translating abroad as well. And, I am curious, Michael, as you are seeing so much of this unfold at a global scale, how has the beauty industry's embrace of more inclusivity, especially in America, have you seen that unfolding?
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely have seen it. I think for a lot of the more established brands, and going back to what Fenty did, I remember when that happened for us, it was a big moment at Lauder. Like everyone, there were like meetings being set up and war rooms, which is what we call when we're doing like brainstorm sessions. And literally all the brand heads were like, wait a minute, I'm Mac, I've been doing this, right? Or I'm Becca and I've been doing this. So I think it's a matter of, how do we take that message? And outside of the US, to your point, we're seeing this in the UK, but also in Asia, it's so different, and that customer is so different, and their skin tones are different, and the pigments are different. And the models, and that's something that I've learned, is sort of like, we're like, oh, let's just put an Asian model. No, you can't do that in Korea, because if she's not Korean, or in China, if she's not Chinese, it's not the same.
Right.
So then there's all these factors, and I think to your point, it's like, we want to be able to be inclusive of everyone. It's obviously not that easy to have, and the world is so diverse, so it actually becomes really challenging. But what we try to do is, with our international teams and, when we're doing campaigns, we try to make it as locally relevant as possible. And that's when we have to sort of let go of the reins, and whether it's utilizing UGC, which is a great way to sort of like, you're allowing that customer to make it locally relevant for them, and then the brand reposts that content and reuses that content. And I think a lot of the big brands are starting to do that, or getting more comfortable of like releasing the creative reins, because it's a scary thing to sort of say, like, my brand is now not in my control, but it's in your hands.
And that is part of this idea that in our times now, if you're planning on launching a brand, if you have a product idea that you want to bring to market, you really have control over your narrative in a way that you may never have had before. And we as editors still play a role in helping you tell that story, and getting a new product launch into Vogue is still a very edited process, and a lot goes into that, and the way we tell those stories, hopefully is something that we are doing in a very unique way. But individual brands now have this responsibility and this almost a luxury to be able to own that narrative and to storytell. And Linda and myself and Nick, we have editorial backgrounds, so I imagine it makes it at least a little bit easier. But knowing that you have all these channels to fill, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, all of the others, there's so much video is huge now. You have to constantly feed these different channels. Is that challenging to you guys as you're trying to grow these brands, both locally and globally, to be constantly filling content channels? And does that impact the way you're thinking about launches and also how you're hiring?
Yes.
Yes.
Instagram stories, not to get too in the weeds, but Instagram stories is incredibly daunting. It's like having a TV channel. And the most successful brands are posting on Instagram stories more than once a day, which is insane, because as editors, we would like labor over a story for a month, and now we're talking about coming up with 7 stories in a day. And obviously it can be one story over 7 tiles, but generally speaking, I think, Linda and I were talking backstage about the importance of hiring social media talent into small brands, and they're not just analytics people who are looking at like how many likes something got and comparing it to last week's, the same time or finding out optimal posting times. It's people who can actually produce the content and post the content and kind of shorten that loop too, because it's efficient, but also like people who are creating content for social media, who are embodying the brand on social media, should also be seeing how the brand and how their content's being embraced or not being embraced, and how it's being engaged with or not being engaged with. So I think that it's become, we're a team of 4 people, and 2 of the hires, one is on influencer marketing and one is on social media, just because those are 2 ways that we're creating the brand, that we're sort of like telling people about the brand, we're creating content through influencers and also speaking to inclusivity in a lot of ways through our influencer outreach. Because we're not a brand that has lots of campaigns with lots of bodies. We're a product-focused brand right now. But so influencers have been super important in telling our brand story. But then secondarily, and not to be underestimated, is social media. And I also recommend it to anyone who sort of wants to. You guys have the tools in a way that our generation has not had to really understand how social media works, and it's a great way in to the heartbeat of a company. That you might have had to start as an administrative assistant back in the day, but now you can start as a social media assistant, and you're right in the middle of it. Yeah. The downside is that everyone can see your work, which sucks, and everyone has an opinion on it. But the upside is that you're right in the center of where the brand is happening and where the story is being told.
There's so much creative freedom if you're a social media person. And, I was chief creative officer of Revlon, and it was kind of surprising to me when I went and saw that 8 people would have a say in the retouching. And I was like, oh my God, that's why it's over-retouched. No. We have one person who decides what the retouching is. That cannot be. Everyone's going to have a hand in it. And when I went to the second day of my job, I went to a shoot, and there were 50 people on the shoot who were not involved in the shoot itself. And I'm like, who are all these people? Well, everyone's checking everybody else. It's like, that's too many people. You need to it's really great on social media. We have one person who does the visuals and the captions, and I work with her, and we have another outside person who kind of pitches in, but it's an enormous freedom. And it's to me, as a content creator, I love it. I think it's the greatest thing ever. I don't find it this is daunting that we have to fill all this thing. I'm like, how lucky are we that we get to tell our story one way, and then we tell it another way, and then we tell it again from all different angles. And it used to be that a brand would do an ad campaign in the fall, and they'd have 4 images, and they'd have some copy, and then they'd run it in the magazines, and that was it. That had to stand for everything. And with magazines, you could change every month, and it was so great. Okay, well, yeah, we had this person on the cover, and next month we'll have somebody else, and that person might be old news. And so there was this constant, refreshment of content that made you relevant, and that's what social media gives you every day. So to me, it's heaven.
And how do you maintain an authentic voice while populating all of these channels? How do you make sure that you are staying consistent when you are creating all of this content?
I think a little bit has to come down to reality, because there's so much noise in social media right now, and what they have tests or studies now that say that the attention span's literally 10 seconds. And I'm addicted to my Instagram for sure. I'm always on there. But when you have a brand or you start your product, whatever it is you're doing, don't get all hung up on producing constantly stuff to stimulate all of this addiction. Keep really true to your core of what it is you want to do. Because, people, when the Fenty came up, back to this, if you guys don't mind me saying this, as a small brand, I'm listening to what they're saying, and the Fenty with all the 40 foundations. I can't do that as a smaller brand. We got, people would say, where's your 40 colors? And I'm like, well, you have to sometimes just close out all that information that you're getting, because sometimes it's too much. Stay true to your core. Do what it is you want to do, and don't be influenced by everybody telling you what to do. I get told what to do all the time on there. Sometimes I listen, sometimes I just have to go, oh my God, I need a break here. So
it's not that you're not working on those shades. It's just that it's really hard to
exactly.
say, coming in 2 years, like it's on the way. We're just doing
exactly. Yeah, it takes a long time, and like I said, as a small brand, you have to go, don't get yourself all up in the ego where you have to have all this stuff out and ready to go, and your 10-second Insta stories all the time. I don't know personally, I don't mind it, but I don't stick to it because I find the Insta story, it's 10 seconds, it's on for 24 hours, and you do a beautiful piece, like a video you've done or a beautiful picture, and it's gone.
And I think
that's heartbreaking.
I mean, Rosemary's point is very valid here. As editors, if you want to stay true to the core of your brand, because once you dilute your brand, it is very hard to come back. Mm-hmm. And these are things that we are watching all the time when we are thinking about what to cover in the magazine. And I think it's very easy for people now when you're launching a new brand, you see what are called unicorns, right? These are these startups that get billion-dollar valuations, and it is incredibly exciting to be part of the beauty industry right now because for the first time in a long time, a lot of those brands are beauty brands and they're founded by women. And that hasn't happened in a very long time, if not ever. What a time to be alive. But it's very important that when you see that, before you become a billion-dollar brand, you have to come to market and you have to sustain an energized community who is interested in your product line and in you. So I thought it would be a nice way to wrap this up because I know we're running out of time. If you guys could each sort of talk about sort of some of the fundamental things that you have learned, especially out the gate, that have really helped you sort of get to where you are now, and how those lessons have sort of impacted your experience in this industry. Anybody feel free to start.
I have the pleasure of working with my co-founder, Randy, who spent 15 years in various positions at Estée Lauder in senior marketing positions. And one of the things that she says, which I think is such a great thing to think about, is she was like, good marketing is like fireworks. And you always have to have something going off, and ideally multiple things going off at any one time. Like Linda, when I was hearing you talk about moist flesh, I was also thinking making noise. Like if anyone has an idea for a brand, think about how are you going to break through and make in 2019, actually being able to break through and have anyone really hear what you have to say means you have to find a way in, and you have to find a way to, whether it's a sort of potential for going viral, or whether it's sort of like an aesthetic or a look that's different, that feels new, really figuring out how you're gonna make noise and actually become more than just you talking to your friends. I mean, and that's
and not just make noise for the sake of making noise,
yes.
too, because I don't want to we did name our brand Flesh, and when I was in the meeting when we presented the brand to Ulta, one woman at the end was, they were all excited, and then one woman's like, I just have a question. When my friends and I are having wine together, we talk about the words we hate, and the word we hate most is moist, and the second one is flesh. I'm like, oh my God, what a genius idea! I'm going to call lipstick moist, but it was sort of true to what the lipstick was about. But anyway, it is I think that there's so much to learn and so much to. The good thing about being a new brand right now is that you can continually iterate, and it's never done. You don't have to say, this is it, but you also have to stand for values, and you have to have an identity and stick to that identity and articulate it. And I started Allure magazine in 1991, and then I started Flesh in 2018. And I think that the similarity is you have to make fast decisions, and you have to identify who you are and know who you aren't, as you were saying, Rosemary, and then continually come back to that. It's like your heart is constantly in check, and make sure everyone knows it, and if you're off, you bring it back, and that's, I think, what it's all about.
And Georgie, I know we were talking, it took you 6 years from concept to actual production to get the idea for Milk Makeup going. Was there any one moment or anecdote that you can share of a pivotal turning point in kind of making it a reality?
Well, it has been 6 years to now. So
no,
it was
okay.
So 3 years to getting it out in the market. But I think just you have to have a backbone in what your personal values are and always come back to that. And that is your differentiator. Everybody always says, the greatest story you can tell is your own. So it's really tapping into what is important to you and basically balancing that with what is important in the world and finding that middle, little white space that is uniquely you and also will resonate to a big audience. And with us, my aha moment was the reason why I gravitated to Milk Studios in the beginning. And if a lot of you guys don't know the place, it's a photo studio that's in New York and LA, but it's also this kind of incubator for creativity. So I actually started a film production company there in 2008 called Legs, and we did art films, commercials, music videos, and before that I was at MTV. But I tapped into why did I come to Milk? I came to Milk because of the creative pulse that is there, and that is a universal thing that that's why you guys all gravitated to SCAD. That is why most people move to New York City and most urban areas, is to be part of a creative pulse that is representative of just potential and freedom to be yourself. And so really creativity was at the core, and I wanted to channel Debbie Harry. Literally, I had that Warhol Polaroid of Debbie Harry, and I just stared at that while I was writing the concept for the brand. I mean, it was, tapping into that and also tapping into why I came there in the first place and what my partner Rossi really created there, which is this space for creativity to flourish and grow. It's really at the core of our brand. Yeah.
And I think for myself, I feel really honored and privileged to have worked at big companies. I was at L'Oreal, and now at Estée Lauder, which was also founded by a woman named Mrs. Estée Lauder, and pretty phenomenal what she started and created to what we are today. I think for me, what's always been important is kind of similar to what everyone on the panel is saying, is really fighting for what you believe in. And I think that was sort of something that I learned very early on in the industry. If I really felt passionate about something and really believed in it, that I had a voice, and it was okay to have a voice. And sometimes as you're starting up in your career, there might be some concerns on, how do you navigate certain things, but, let your opinions be heard. People want to hear from you. They want to know what you're thinking. And obviously, as a marketer now, I'm thinking about this generation of consumers. You're my consumer, right? So I think it's important that you make sure that your voice is heard and you really believe and fight for what you believe in.
And Rosemary, any concrete details about basically starting? I mean, Rosemary and I met in some earlier incarnations when I was running the beauty platform at a website that was called style.com that was very influential on the industry when it was still live. And I had heard about Rosemary's products, her initial highlighter, the illuminator, the living illuminator, which is amazing, through word of mouth. And she didn't have high-res images produced yet. She was just starting out. I really wanted to feature it, so I physically went down to her apartment to pick up a sample so that we could shoot it in our studio. And she had all the samples there. She was very much hands-on. Anything that you can add about sort of being your own assistant, your own boss, your own production manager in those early days?
Well, at the beginning, it was just this idea of mine where I'm coming from a background of eco-consciousness from my parents in Canada, because I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And I've always eaten really healthy. I've always done these major detoxes and things. So I was learning a lot. And I was painting these beautiful models. I cared about their health. I just wanted to go creative with doing a product that would look beautiful on them, that they could, wear for the rest of their lives, whatever. Well, you have to buy a new one every year, but. And so I found myself, creating this brand. And I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I'm a makeup artist. I'm not in the marketing department of my brand. I have my girls doing that. I'm just a makeup artist, and I just wanted to make girls look beautiful. And I'm very simple with what I'm doing. I went back to basic, early kind of like what Estée Lauder did at the very beginning when she started in her brand. Taking pigment color with the waxes and a little bit of oil. So I've gone back to the basics of cosmetics into a very simple formula that's healthy. Not that nothing else is healthy. I'm not saying that at all, you guys, so don't think I am. But and it's grown into this well, I've become actually a mad scientist out of this because I have to study everything. So I've gotten obsessed with, what pesticide's been put on or what a pigment is coated in if it's got parabens coated on it. So I've turned into a little bit of a mad scientist, which you guys can probably vouch.
So from brand assistant to associate to president to mad scientist.
Oh my God.
All right, well, I think that's all the time that we have.
Thank you.